Ordinance number 14-1856, amending Pacific Municipal Code 24.16 relating to city stormwater utility rates.
We had a public hearing a few weeks ago about utility rates, and I brought the slideshow back because I know there were some questions about some elements of this. And I'll call your mind to this slide, which was the first slide, when the utility rates were last raised. Water and sewer rates were last raised effective January 1st, 2011. Stormwater rates were raised effectively January 1st, 2009. So that was 5 years ago on storm, 3 years ago on water and sewer. Now we went through the list of water, and this is the proposed rate structure. As I said before, it's a relatively minor adjustment. The base rate will be unchanged. The first tier will be unchanged. It's just tiers 2 and 3 which have a small percentage increase. And this was held this way because we felt that we could hold this rate down. However, we've raised a little bit on those other upper tiers to encourage conservation. And so that was the overview of the water. Do you have a question?
Yeah, the ordinance is stormwater, not water.
Well, I'm going through all three of these because after the stormwater, there's the water and the sewer. They're all lined up together. So I thought I would, and there was a request that I talk about the presentation again. So I thought it might be easiest to bring the whole thing together this way. And then it will end with the stormwater. And the residential charge, basically for the average resident, goes from $26.60 to $26.90, which was a 1.1% increase. On the sewer side, what happened there was Metro has raised its rates us. They raised it a couple of years ago or a year ago. We did not raise our rates, and we were falling behind. So we increased it to cover that cost. The actual increase for residential customers was $10.64 a month, and the average commercial customer is $15.11. Stormwater, we discussed the fact that we have our NPDES permit with the state, and what started off with just a few requirements, and every time they renew it, which has been on a 5-year cycle, they add new requirements. These new requirements require the city to do more work. It requires more manpower. We want to make some investments in some of the infrastructure we have around town. Some of the other things we need to do is there's a lot of staff education to make sure that we're staying up to speed on the NPDES permit requirements. And so this was the rate structure that we had proposed that was in the budget proposal for 2014. I'm going to go to the next slide, which darn it. There's another slide in here and I'm not seeing it. Well, I will talk about it. We looked at 3 scenarios of potential rates. The first scenario was we still had the same single-family residential rate of $13. The senior rate was $11.05. The commercial approved rate was also $13. The commercial non-approved rate was $13. The commercial approved rate, instead of the $5.75, was about $6.90. However, they would pay $13 on the first rate. This was across the board, 21% increase. What we had proposed, this was scenario B2. This was the $13 increase, or increase to $13 on the residential, only $5.75 on the commercial approved. These are for the commercial people who have facilities that met the requirements of the storm drainage manual at the time that they developed their property. there's not a lot of work we have to do. They maintain their own systems. The only thing we are really providing is making sure that they're fulfilling their requirements every year and testing and cleaning and reporting back to us the fact that they have properly maintained their facilities. Then for the non-approved facilities, it was the $16. These are the people that we actually have to go out, and though they don't have anything, so they're transmitting more water to the city to take care of, to convey, to discharge, and potentially treat down the road when standards change. Scenario B3, which was not up here, council had requested only looking at $12. So with $12 and across the board, that was a 12% increase. So an across the board rate would look like $12 for the single family, $10.20 for senior rates, $12 for the commercial rate, and the commercial approved would be $6.40 for their subsequent facility. And then the PETA rate stays the same across the board. Now the current rate structure, based upon the number of ERUs we have, brings in around $518,000. The proposed rate we have here would bring in $664,000. And it sounds like a huge increase, but we've been chipping away at the reserves that we have had in the stormwater account. And we need to build those up because we've got a lot of projects we have to be doing. We get some grants, but we still have to provide some local match, so we need those funds for local match. Scenario B1, which was the 13 for residential, 13 for the commercial, and $690 for the approved commercial, brings in $626,000. The scenario B3, which was the $12 rate, was requested by council for us to look at, brings in $580,000. So that's about $85,000 less than what was proposed in the 2014 budget.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Gates.
Well, we know there's some projects. I had a citizen come up to me and say that we're not compliant with some of our stuff. What projects are in need of getting done?
Well, associated with our street project, we have storm drainage work that has to do. There's a lot that is going to go in there. We do have to provide local match for the grants, so some of that is in the form of new storm drainage facilities on both Valentine and Stewart. We have places where we've got roadside ditches that are not in the best of shape. We're looking at putting some of that in culverts and piping it. We've got some places where we do have some culverts that appear to have collapsed. Up on First Avenue, there's one area up there that it looks like the pipe has collapsed that needs to be done as well. And we do have a list of some of these projects in our capital facilities plan as part of the stormwater report.
Back up to the previous slide, please. The one that showed the...
Just the stormwater?
No. That one. Okay. Why are we $200,000 less on revenues in 2013 than we were 2012?
That I do not know.
Okay. The next one, on the expenditures, we had $7,571 less expenditures, and our fund balance went up, even with the revenue down. So why is there a need to increase if the fund balance went up? I understand you have some projects, but I'm just concerned about the need for that great increase.
I can answer the first question. The reason that's higher in 2012 is due to developer contributions. we received $116,000, we received $11,000 this past year, so that's part of, the main part of that. Usually, their fluctuations will be due to grants on both sides, so you can't really tell, by looking at that, because a lot of the grant money went into 2012, where the developer did, the investment and developer contribution. So, the one area that concerns me is you're not looking at the facility fund, the capital facility fund, which received nothing in 2013, and $40,000 transfer in 2012, and that's $90,000 is all that's in there, which pretty much can't do it very much at all. So we need to get back, as far as my perspective is, talking with Jim and Ken, taking whatever we make over the net expenses and funnel it into the capital facilities fund so that we can do the projects that are projected in our CIP and what we need.
Other questions from council? So do I hear a motion from council on ordinance 14?
I move to approve ordinance 14-1856 as proposed.
Second?
Councilmember Jones, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think the capital improvement fund requirements and the city's proposed and needed repairs of our water systems, that is beneficial to go with as not looking at all three of these, I don't know.
B2 is the one that was
That's
proposed.
Yeah, the B2. So, I just think we need to not shortchange ourselves. I know it's a tax, I know it's an increase, but it's very little on the residential portion. And I think it's a necessity.
Councilmember Case?
Yeah, like I stated earlier, most jurisdictions look at increases and things like this because they've reached their constitutional limits for property taxes. City of Pacific, believe it or not, is one of the lowest property taxes in the area that I saw. We're well under our constitutional limit, but our citizens, apparently a couple years ago, either because it wasn't presented properly or for whatever reason, rejected increasing their property taxes. So we can't take monies out of the general fund coming from property taxes to fund these projects. So by increasing the fees, we raise the money we need to do the projects that need to be done because they're mandated to us. They have to be compliant. We cannot go out and inspect our businesses and other people who are responsible for building good storm sewer systems for their businesses and then not comply with the same laws ourselves. So we need this money to work on these projects, and this is the only way we're going to get the money to do that. And that's why I think, it works out to about $27 a year for the average homeowner, from what I'm seeing here, roughly. And it's, I think for what we're going to get out of it, it's worth it. Again, it's collecting money at the local level and reinvesting it into our local needs versus sending it to the state or the feds and then begging to get it back. So collect it at this level and fix it at this level.
Any other comments from council? Councilmember Cyrus?
Okay, as you know, I'm against this, but I will go ahead and approve this, but I would like to have some guarantee that at least we will look into and try to establish a projected increase that we will need on these utilities, and maybe move it 1% per year, 2% per year, whichever this would be. Now, I brought this up numerous times. The last time I brought it up, Pam Nelson was still here. She shot me down again on it, saying that, well, there's no provision for us to have a reserve account that would credit towards the user's fees or whatever. I don't know, and I finally gave up. I just But in talking to Ken, he talked to Rich, and I believe what I understood is that this can be done. Am I correct or not?
Well, you can't encumber future revenues, but you can put something in writing and pass it on to the next council or the same council next year, so that it's set there. So what I understand you're saying is that you want to have a percentage method set up, so we don't go 4 years without a rate hike and then have this big one, right?
That is correct.
Right. And so, there's nothing that says you can do that, and so you can't, like, let's say, pass an ordinance that goes 3 years in the future, but it can be recommendations to be followed by future council. That's about the most you can do. So, but I do appreciate what you want to do so that it's even-handed throughout the life of, at least a 5-year period. And what you can do is you can work, I talked about working on a 5-year financial master plan that would include that. So it would be guidance to the council. That's about, I think, the best you can do. I think that's probably what your finance director at the time was trying to tell you, that you can't encumber future revenues, or, so to say, well, we want to pass an ordinance that goes more than 1 year. You can do that, not an ordinance, but a rate hike that goes more than 1 year. It's dicey, because then you're looking at, trying to control something that a new council may want to change. And that's why they usually don't allow things that way.
Any other comments? Councilor McKay?
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing Clint say is that he would like to see an increase annually in smaller chunks, so that we don't get surprised by this big hit. And that, based on what I'm hearing you say, the only way we can accomplish that is to vote on rate increases every year.
Well, apparently, but that's not what I wanted to accomplish.
Right.
Councilmember Holsey.
These rate increases should have been addressed during the budget process. Because, as I understand it, a lot of the budget was depended on these rate increases, but they weren't.
Any other comments from the council? Comments from the audience?
John Thompson, 416 Second Avenue Southeast. I understand, that you have to have money to operate on. That's not my issue. The questions I have is, we live on a private cul-de-sac. Each homeowner owns a portion of the cul-de-sac, and it was the way it was engineered, when it was built, and it's a long other story. All of our sewer lines go into one trunk that goes out to Pacific Avenue. It's understandable. Our water line that comes in from Pacific Avenue and branches off the meters. Understandable. We have one storm water drain right in the middle of the cul-de-sac that goes through the properties and to the neighbors behind us and whatnot out to Hawthorne. My concern is, I'm paying for the sewer, I'm paying for storm water. Every time it backs up here on 3rd Avenue, our sewer manhole cover sits about 3 inches lower than out here. So it bubbles over and goes into the storm water. We end up putting sandbags or something around it and call utilities. They come out and say, that's your problem, it's a private street. Okay? If I'm paying money for this stuff, who maintains it? Because we, as homeowners, are responsible for it. We didn't engineer the installation of it. We didn't engineer the fact the manhole cover was poorly engineered to begin with and lower than the main trunk out here. Who cleans out our stormwater? So far, we have taken care of it ourselves. We've dug out the sump drain, we've rotted the pipes, and all's behind us. If we're paying for this stuff, can't we get the city to at least maintain it? even though it is on private property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? No further comments from the audience? Any further comments from council? Councilmember Tate.
I know it's not typical to address an audience member, but have you guys considered turning the private street over to the city,
Huh?
making it a public street?
Be nice if it would have been built to code, but instead of a 40-foot street, we have a 20-foot street
This is
instead of
not
a 30-foot
pertaining to
cul-de-sac.
the motion on the
No,
floor.
that's not,
Point, sorry.
can't be done.
Well, I'm just wondering if that's one way of dealing with it.
It's something that we can bring up at another time, but it's not pertaining to the motion that is currently on the floor.
Okay.
So any other comments from council? Seeing none, roll call of council, please.
Councilmember Halsey? Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Cage?
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson? Aye. Councilmember Steiger?
No.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is